All right, morena koutou. Kia ora, everyone. And welcome to today's Puna Kōrero meeting for the 20th of April 2023. To begin, I'd like to ask Taku to lead us in karakia. Taku? Thanks very much, Taku. All right, moving to apologies. We've no apologies, but I note that Councillor Ford is joining us via Zoom today. Public forum, there are no requests to speak in public forum, noting we do have two speakers that will speak as part of an agenda item. Conflicts of interest, are there any conflicts? No. Notifications of extraordinary business, there are none. Confirmation of minutes from our 6 April meeting, I will move them, but I have a seconder. Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. All those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. We move now to item 7.1, the deliberations report on the future of Tiriti Hall. Now, councillors, I'll just note, looking at the report under the proposed recommendations at number 3, that currently it says agree to recommend the council adopts either option C or option D. I'm advised for the purpose of putting this on the table that I do need to propose an option. So for the purpose of this, I am going to move this to get it on the table proposing option C. However, if based off of discussion around the table we want to change that, I'm happy to put that with the leave of the committee to be able to make that adjustment. So this is a process-based thing. So I'd like to move this, noting option C at recommendation 3. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. All right, we have two speakers to speak to this today, further to the submissions that we heard last time. I'll remind speakers that you have 5 minutes. Once your time begins, you'll hear a bell at 4 minutes, and that's a signal to begin wrapping things up. That includes time for questions. For councillors, this is the same as last time. Even though we are making a decision today, you can ask questions of the speakers. We're not here to have a debate with the speakers, so make sure to keep it to that. So to begin things, Wiremu Grace. Yeah, absolutely. If you just sit down and push the button on the microphone.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant, go ahead.
I'm not sure. Okay, cool. And let me know when I'm starting. Now?
Go for it.
Okay, ka pai. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak on the Tiriti Hall. So I thought about what would I like to see and what would be of value to us. My name is Wiremu Grace. I work for Te Runanga o Ngāti Toa as the arts manager. And I thought what would be of most value to us, and I'll talk about our connection to that place in a minute. But I thought what would be most valuable would be for that space to be used as a vibrant shared space based on good values and tikanga that promotes and encourages skill building, sharing, repurposing, community connections and resilience. And the sort of things that I'd like to see there within that would be kapahaka, performance, theatre, music, dance, art, creative activities, upcycling, bikes, books, toys, tools, tool sharing, sewing, knitting, growing kai, food co-op, propagating, nature connection, water safety, surf lessons, natural play space, kaumātua and kids learning together. So this is sort of like a vision of this space, and within that it would be leased through the Runanga, but co-governed with the community. That would need to be worked out alongside PCC and the interest groups that would have an interest in seeing this space shared in that way. So yeah, guided by a set of values and tikanga, for example, no drinking or smoking, reusing, upcycling, parakore, that sort of thing. Why is it of interest to me in particular? Because my tupuna come from there. My tupuna, Wiparata Te Kaka Kura, took whitireia went to court for on behalf of our people to return the land that is whitireia when it was supposed to be used by the Anglican Church for a school for Ngāti Toa and wasn't, but was sold and came out of our hands as Ngāti Toa. So that's one part of my history personally, my whānau personally. My whānau personally as well have a connection to a piece of land called Tūtai Paraikete, which was taken under the Public Works Act. And subsequent years meant we had been alienated from that land. I've lived there for 30 years. My grandfather had a boat shed there. So I've got a very personal connection to the place, but I think, with Ngāti Toa moving back into a place that was actually a reservation back in the time when Governor Gray took our land under duress of taking our tupuna Tarauparaha. This was one part of three, I think, or maybe four, Taku could correct me, reserves that were set aside for Ngāti Toa that would be not alienated. So it was subsequently alienated through legislation, and you can see that we have a very strong history and connection to that space. I would like to see some of that history recognised. I'd like to see that recognised in our, thank you very much, in our connection to that place. But, under tikanga and the kawa of us as Ngāti Toa, we are very embracing of our community, and we would like to work alongside our community to do things that are good for our community. And I believe that building those relationships and connection to our land, to our sea, to our waterways, and to our visual representation of our history, including the Vela family who helped us farm Mana Island as Ngāti Toa, and we built, and our names are still in the wool shed that is on Mana Island. Those sort of histories need to be told, and told well, and we need, I believe, to be connecting to those stories and a vision for the future that embraces our community.
Thanks very much. I note there is a question from Mayor Baker.
Thank you very much. That's interesting. If we decided with your option, would you let the two groups that are in there continue on with their existing leases, or let them use the building and then use it afterwards, or not?
I'm not sure about the logistics of I believe it's a creche and a radio club. I'm not sure about the logistics of being able to manage that in what they do in their activities. So I think that would need discussion. But and I think that a steering committee that involved other interest groups who would like to see something else for that place would be the ones to discuss that with.
All right, just checking if there were any other questions from anyone else. No? All right, thank you very much, Widow.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Kia ora.
All right, our next speaker via Zoom, Abby Holmes. Abby, again, you've got 5 minutes. I'm not sure if she'll hear the bell.
I've got a clock.
Okay, you should be able to, but worst case scenario, I'll let you know if your time is up. But you've got 5 minutes. Go ahead, Abby.
Thank you. Morena koutou, everyone. My name is Abby Holmes. I'm just representing the Titahi Bay Community Group and trying to bring as non-biased view as possible. I'm not representing myself in this submission. Sorry I couldn't be there today, but thank you for this opportunity to come via Zoom. We as a community group didn't have an opportunity to ask everyone in a consultation, but we did created a public meeting to bring information to the public that were concerned. And from that, we gathered that there was definite interest in having a community space. A lot of people are going out of the bay to reach activities that could be brought to them locally. And you can just imagine that there's people that are isolated from being able to get to other places like Linden and Tawa and would really appreciate that connection. There was also wonderful people like Waramu who were looking to create a space that I can brings real community, a heart to the bay. And that is something that we're missing, and some people can't really envisage it unless it's actually there's people to create that dream and they can see the purpose of it. There are also those people that have a need right now for what is already there. The child care, the Bay Kids Club was brought up, as was the radio club. They do have a place and have an institution in the Bay. And so there needs to be some discussion how those things can marry, if possible, or that they can find a place that is equally welcoming for them. So with the options, we saw that the option 2 was the most non-biased. Anyone could book, but then it sort of lacked the community spirit, and also having a blanket fee might mean that some people that are doing non-profit things can't really access the space. The option 3 were having a really strong lessee. People were worried, concerned about the access that community really would have. But otherwise, if that was sort of ironed out in discussion, or having a board created for the sharing of the space with interest groups that could be really supported. I really wanted, there was an accountant that was working with us called Phil Klatsworthy, and maybe he's there today, but he said that this can't be done for free, even though you want to be able to put your heart out there and really try and make this thing done with volunteer work. They've done this at Vogel Morn. At first it was done for free, but actually they had to hire a part-time administrator to control all the bookings and things. So even option 4, it needs to be discussed. There's a lot more to these things than we really know right now. But maybe with a combination of all the options, with council taking bookings with as much remote work as possible, timed locks and things that could be done. So there's not an ongoing expense. Maybe the costs can be brought down. Maybe self-cleaning and an MOU agreement that people can use the space without too much cost to the ratepayers, and maybe with a strong lessee taking charge and having a clear vision, but sharing the space with as much community spirit as possible would be great, and maybe having a board to discuss all the options. The Te Bay Community Group would be willing to be on the board, trying to give us non-biased view, but we really think there needs to be someone from the council there as well. You don't know what personalities are going to join. Yeah, that's pretty much it from me. If you have any questions, it'd be greatly.
Yeah, thanks very much, Abby. We do have a question from Councillor Filo.
Morena, thank you, Abby, for making the time to come and speak to us today, and to Waramu as well. From reading your submission and hearing all the cool things that you want to do, and listening to all the awesome activities that Waramu talked about, I'm just wondering if the option that's been proposed today, which is option C, basically, if you're not sure what that is, that's it's basically that the Bay Kids Club and the radio amateur group can still be there, but that in between the times that they're not using it, that can be opened up for the community.
Right.
Do you think that option would serve what you're speaking about, that the activities that you want to do, the workshops that you want to do, would that be doable?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've been thinking about it for quite a number of years, how it could work, because I was involved with the last consultation a few years ago. And seeing the space, it's set up like a childcare centre with a lot of things out. But because I was part of the centre and we had the same issue with all the children's things out. But we wanted to hire the space out to the community and make it a really welcoming space for everyone. So we created some really clever designs of cupboards, and we're able to put everything away. It was also really beneficial so that when everyone was having their meeting at the end of session, the children wouldn't get everything out again. So it worked really well. So it's possible, but the only thing is because Eileen has it morning and in the afternoon, to get everything out and set up every time would be pain on the daily. I can imagine weekends will be really strong and people could use it, but potentially during the middle of the day, only people that could use a particular space, or maybe having the children or someone that could help Eileen get what they need out. You see, the thing is with children, we try and stimulate their brains in different ways each day, don't get the same thing out every time. So putting everything away is really beneficial. Then they just get out the stuff that they want and then put the stuff away is actually, it's how we would want to work in the home. I think that it would really work beneficially for everybody. And then having someone in during the day that doesn't require a heap of space or is respectful and easy to put it away, it could work. And in the evenings, meetings and things, I could see. And then potentially if the radio club was there would be people that would be more involved and interested in how it works, because that's the thing about the community group. If you're there and you're able to touch base with these people, maybe, like I teach yoga, I would be happy to say to Eileen, hey, why don't I do a session with you after school one day or something like that? You can tie in a lot more if you're crossing paths. But at the moment, it's like it's a barrier. It's like a castle. You can't get in unless you're invited, and there's no kind of give and take. There's no enrichment, and I think we're missing enrichment, and this is in our community. We really don't know what's out there. There's skilled people and knowledge out there, but we're not tapping into those things. People are having to leave the group, the community, to get those things.
Cool. Thank you very much, Abby.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of the time we have for public speakers. So thank you to both the speakers that we've had today. Abby, just noting for you, if you do want to watch the rest of the meeting, it's being live streamed on YouTube, so you'll be able to jump over to there if you want to see the rest.
Thank you.
But cool, thank you very much, both Abby and Wiremu. So what I'll do now is I'll ask, I think, is Kate going to speak to this? If you mind coming up to the table. And just noting that we've moved obviously from those options that were consulted on to we've got these options here today, and obviously we'll take the report as read. But Kate, I wonder if there's anything that you would just like to briefly summarise before we get into councillor discussion?
Sure. Thank you. I will take the paper as read and the multiple annexes. I'd just like to highlight that we followed a slightly different approach this time, trying to encourage more community input than we managed to get last time when we did this in 2019. And the feedback that we did get, the 52 submissions and the ones you heard today, it was quite split. There's a number of people that want to keep the hall used as it is now, and then there's a large number who want to see it managed differently. So that's what we've tried to accommodate in the options. There's a couple of compromise options, I've called them, in there, which weren't consulted on publicly. They're sort of new, but they're a merger of the 4 different options that went out originally. But other than that, I think I'll just leave it to you to discuss.
Cool, thank you. And probably the one question I'd ask if you could touch on, and then I'll look to other councillors as well, just with in the report, the 2 options that were the recommended options around C and D. If you could maybe just briefly speak to the differences between those 2 options specifically.
Sure. So option C is the slightly easier option. It is a licence agreement where the Bay Kids Club and the Radio Club, I think that's the licence agreement, sorry, where have they gone? Yes, sorry, it's the licence. So the existing users would still get to use the hall. There would be a licence in place that permitted that, and then when they're not using it, it would be available for booking outside of that by other groups. There are some limitations to that option. Because the Bay Kids Club is an Oscar-accredited business, it can't have other people coming and going at the same time, so there has to be a separation between the Bay Kids Club and other users. Option D is a bit more expensive in that it seeks to do some modifications internally to the hall so that we can be a bit more flexible in who uses it at what time. That option is both a bit more expensive and a bit trickier to implement because Te Reti Hall is a heritage building listed in our district plan. So we would need to go through a resource consent process to get permission to do some of those modifications. That's the key difference between the 2.
Cool, thank you very much. Going now to questions. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for that. Talking about the Oscar accreditation assessment, have the Bay Kids people agreed that that's acceptable to them?
No, we haven't sought their permission for that.
Okay, I recall last time in 2019 when we discussed this with them, that was right off the board as far as they were concerned. Okay. Also, I wonder, with these, we've worked on percentages when we've talked about who's in favour and who's not in favour. How much emphasis do we put on submissions from outside of Titahi Bay?
To my knowledge, there weren't an extensive amount of submissions from outside Titahi Bay. I think there were a handful who were members of the Radio Club that came from areas outside of the Bay, but they have all been treated equally.
Okay, so we put flyers into all of the houses in Titahi Bay only, nowhere else?
Correct.
But a number of these submissions have come from Ngaio, from Tawa, from Paraparam, and they get equal access to this hall, access to submissions.
Yes.
So that skews the percentages quite dramatically. When I counted the numbers up, it was quite a few from outside of the area, and that actually does skew the use of this hall for Titahi Bay people, which it specifically is. And when we look at the percentages, it gives a whole different view of things. In fact, it would completely change the dynamics of the numbers that you've presented in the end. So I'm not sure if it's a fair basis to decide this on, but it's just a thought.
Taku.
I'll just ask one little question. Were the flyers dropped in Te Takopuahia marae?
I am not sure what the Reach Media area actually includes in its Titahi Bay distribution. I'd have to check that.
I didn't say anything before because I have a conflict, so I'll stop.
Okay. Councillor Phelan.
Okay. Really good report, Kate. Thank you. There was lots of information. Just wondering about, with the Oscar accreditation, did you get that information from MSD or, so you spoke to the MSD person?
Yes, I contacted the Social Services Accreditation Unit that does the accreditations, and I asked whether there would be anything that prevented a shared space from being Oscar accredited, and the answer was not necessarily, although every accreditation is on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So, and with option D, when you say you need to do some modifications, is that so that basically the Bay Kids Club can be there at the same time there'd be like a movable wall so that another group could be, are you like sort of partitioning the area? Is that what
Correct.
D means?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you could have a few going at the same time.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So one more question. With what Abby spoke about with the storage and the packing away, is that included in C? Like, are we sort of looking at some ways to?
Yes, I think, in fact, most options that will go to the booking system at some stage would have the storage
Yes.
installed.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's sort of sorted then.
Yes.
Last question, actually. License versus lease. What's the difference?
So my understanding is that a license is used when you're sort of giving part of the hall space, and it's sort of a non-exclusive arrangement. So a lease would be used for when they have an entire use of a space, but a license is
Right.
just part of it.
So the radio club would have a lease because their room wouldn't be, for option C, sorry, they'd have a lease so it wouldn't be, their room wouldn't be touched, but the Bay Kids Club area would be a license because when they're not there, it would be booked out. Is that correct?
So I believe yes, that's correct. We are leasing it to the radio club.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Ford.
Morning, guys. Thanks, Katie, for your report. Also, Wiremu and Abby for coming in today. I've just got a question around the use of a community space for commercial business and how does that marry up with the council's own tikanga around supporting local community to get into community spaces. And then the other question I had was around around option C. What is the onus on that own business then to provide their own storage for their for the stuff that they use in order to carry out their business?
So in response to your first question, we don't have a hall use policy. However, the use of the space by a business doesn't sit comfortably within the Reserves Act, which is basically what we're following, which is why originally there was a 5-year limit on the lease that we could give to the Bay Kids Club. That's a large reason, one of the main drivers why we're going through this process, and we wouldn't seek to give it, extend it further after that 5-year period.
And the second question?
Sorry, could you repeat the second question?
So the second question was just around if option C, if we do go through with option C after all this discussion, it's a commercial business, what is the onus on them to provide their own storage for their bits and pieces that they need to put away?
It's a good question. I would say that there is no onus on them to provide that storage. We would be providing the storage, and it would be used by more than the Bay Kids Club potentially, but it would enable greater community use. So it's sort of a gesture that will enable greater use of the hall. Right now, that would be by the Bay Kids Club, but not necessarily indefinitely.
All right, is that all of your questions, Izzy?
Oh no, I just make the comment that I guess my only concern is with putting the onus on the ratepayers then to support a commercial business in order, so all good.
All right, Mayor Baker.
Thank you. I'd actually, after I've said something, I'd like to hear from Taku because I don't see what you've got a conflict on, personally. I can't see where the conflict is. I have an issue, obviously, with it being a business in there. I wondered with option C whether we could shorten and just do another year, because we don't want to see another childcare fall over in this community, which has happened, and give them time to find another space. And I think we need to go wider into the community. I don't think the consultation's been enough with this community. To be fair, with, as Mike said, a lot of people who have consulted are out of the area because they're the radio hem people. So we actually haven't had enough consultation from enough people in the community. So I wondered if we could shorten it to a year. I don't know if we can, or whether I can say that, can we change the option and put in an extra, make it a shorter year? Because I don't want to, someone else can say it after me if they want to do an amendment. I don't want to lose that. But with the business in there, we need to have a policy if we're not, that we can't have businesses if that's the case. But I still think, I've done this lease, we've done this in my time. I think this is the third or fourth time, and we've never got it right in the community. Everyone's always been unhappy, and I still think we haven't got it right in the community. So advice there, whether I...
Ruben?
Through the chair, thank you, Anita, that option B addresses that scenario where they get an extension through till December 2024 to provide them time to find alternative premises.
Does it then consult with the community again, though, on, we've had some really good things put forward, obviously, this morning and in the document, because it needs a bigger thing in the community, and it needs money, obviously. Wendy?
Yes, I might not say that, but it implies that, because we don't want it vacant either.
No.
So I think that's the theory behind that one, that you give some opportunity for Bay Kids to find another location, and during that time you do further work on options.
Okay, thank you. So option B is my preferred option then. And we do need to work with them if we're going to move them on, because we can't have another collapse in the community. I mean, we've dealt with that the last couple of years when one of the others went. So it may be having to work with one of the schools, but that's my preferred option.
So could I just clarify, Mayor Baker, did you want to move an amendment?
I'd like to move option B then.
Okay, all right. From a process perspective, I'll just check. So if Mayor Baker wants to do that now, look for a seconder for that, and then we'll discuss the proposed amendment. Yeah. Okay, cool. So so best practice process here. Shall we continue discussion around this before we talk about option B?
You have to speak to the amendment first, but in actual fact, you are really talking about all of the options. So while you will vote first on the amendment and then on the substantive as moved, if that fails, you can traverse all of those issues, I would have thought, in speaking now.
Okay, cool. I think I'll give assurances that anyone who wants to speak to the substantive, you'll be able to speak to the substantive. So just from a process perspective, we've got a movement from for an amendment from Mayor Baker for option B, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Okay, cool. So now speaking to that amendment, I think that...
Can I just make sure in that amendment, because I'm reading it, it doesn't actually say that it's out for consultation again. It says it's returned to a booking system. So option B, extend the current lease until 24, indicate this time no further leases will be granted. Officers may support the leaseholder to find alternative premises if they wish, but not responsible should this not occur. Once the lease ends in 24, the 2 rooms return to the booking system. Well, it needs to be a consultation, not just a booking system, because we've actually had some options from Ngāti Taura as well. So I know that's pain, but can I make that be, say, once it ends in 24, the hall doesn't stay empty, but we have consultation with the wider community? Can I add that in there?
Yeah, well, I wonder if it's worth... actually, sorry, 1 second, I'm just going to seek some advice.
Yeah. No,
I'm
no.
going to recommend
don't
that
want-
we briefly adjourn the meeting so we can establish exactly what the amendment is, so we will know exactly what we're discussing, and then we'll return. Everyone will still be able to speak to anything in relation to this paper they wanted to. So I'll recommend that we do that. Do I have a
Yeah.
seconder for that? Councillor Waddle, thanks very much. Do I need to put that to a vote to adjourn the meeting? No? Okay, cool. That's all good. I will briefly adjourn the meeting and then come back. Again. All right. So I have a proposed wording. I'll just give everyone a second to get back to their seats. All right. Thank you, everyone. So I have proposed wording for the amendment moved by Mayor Baker, and that's that we agree to adopt option B with community consultation on continued use for the hall. So that's the proposal that we've received here. I'll just read that again so everyone has heard it. That we agree to adopt option B with community consultation on the continued use for the hall. So we're now... So we're going to discuss this amendment. I do still have a
Point of
speaking
clarification.
order. Yep.
So what does consultation mean? Is it the same process we've just gone through and will make us no further ahead? I think we need to be more specific about, I've heard lots of ideas for the use of the hall, but nothing concrete. And that's what you're after, isn't it? Is that what you're after? Not just another, I think we should do this or I think we should do that. There needs to be something concrete come out of this, otherwise it's a pointless process. And you just end up where we are again now.
Okay, so from here, I do have the established speaking order from before. So currently I'll just read this out so everyone knows, and then you can put your hand up if you want to be included as well. Councillor Weehapi, followed by Taku, followed by Councillor Duncan. Sorry, could you put your microphone on?
And that consultation wording, maybe we need to make it a bit tighter. Can we?
We could take it as read, and we understand that you want specific options as a result of this. we could change the wording to reflect that, but I think we have got the sense of that today. So I
just want to
you know,
double check
it
that.
is working with Ngāti Toa
Yes.
on their aspirations. It is working with other members of the community who have also come up with
Okay.
similar but slightly different angle on a broader range of activities.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And can we maybe put a note in the minutes to reflect that? Okay, cool, brilliant. All right, so taking note of other people, I've got Councillor Wehapi speaking next. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a little bit scrambled.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just a couple of things. Sorry. In regard, the first question was around the hall use policy, because I did want to kind of get the feeling of what community means to the community when it comes to the use of the hall. And so in reading Weremu's submission around the space for rangatahi, it being more of a cultural and environmental type use, going back to we don't have a hall use policy, what would we need to do to put in place a hall use policy? And if that's something that will need to be blanketed for all of our halls, or can it be done for one specific one? That's the first question.
I'm happy to answer that. You'll recall 2 years ago, maybe, we did some work on community facilities, which highlighted that comparative to other places, we don't have particularly good spread or good quality of community facilities. They're inclined to be halls and older buildings, much like Te Reti Hall, which don't offer very flexible spaces. So we did attempt in that piece of work to address that kind of issue. But you're right, we have struck affordability issues in stepping into that space, so we're inclined to stick to our knitting and stick with our library provision and some hall space, which is not what people are really wanting these days. They are wanting space that is managed, that has a much broader community development focus. So we have basically been holding off doing further work on that, on the, you know, as we all know, water reform is going to mean that actually some of our other roles are going to become more important relative to our function. So it's going to become a more important part of our portfolio, but right now we basically are trying to keep costs down and not take on new things. So I would just say community use is an interesting thing, isn't it? So many people think a childcare is actually a community use. It might have fees attached to it and paid staff, but they think it is a community purpose. So none of this is that easy in definitional terms, in my view, and it's a kind of big piece of work, and it's an important conversation for the council to have in the longer term. But we're faced with a shorter term decision in a, frankly, older building, not particularly well suited for multi-purpose use. But yeah, that's for another day. So it's a rather long answer.
Yeah, cool. So going back to the commercial side of the hall, I do see what you're saying, Wendy. It is one of those things where you can take it as it's rather the community, you know, because they're providing a space for children so their parents can go and work. But also, yes, they do have staff, but if you look at it from that point of view, then you would look at all of our halls and the usage, because I would prefer to have a childcare facility in our halls than housing, for say, you know, as an example, because I know that could be seen as community too, but on a different level. In regards to the management of the booking system, at this stage, I still think that council needs to have control of the booking system, because my concern is if it falls onto a leaseholder or any particular or specific group, you know, it can be seen as being a bias and it can become quite messy and it could cause further issues. So I just think that the non-bias option would be council to continue with the booking system. Whether they work with the runanga or, you know, different community groups to come to an arrangement, great. But I still think, in my mind, PCC still needs to have control of that booking system. And the last thing is, I feel like we're just dragging it out again if we go with that option B. Yeah, I'm not too sure how I feel about that, but I'll just finish there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Duncan.
Oh, thanks. Look, in all the arguments put forward by Bay Kids Club, it's always been said that they're the only one operating in the area. And so it'd be very hard to compete with them when they've got a rent-free premises to work from. How do you compete with that? Is there some way we can increase the amount that the Bay Kids Club are paying in rent for that property?
Is someone able to speak to that?
Sorry about that. So they are currently paying rent for that room, and there would be there was proposed to be no change to that rent amount, even with the original option C. So that is a rental. We can do a rent review with any new license agreement or lease agreement, whatever that comes out at, or in the booking system. And we could get a valuation around that if needed.
We say there is a rent, but at the moment they pay about $8,000 a year, I think it is, when the average family for a similar sized piece of house in the Bay would be paying more like $30,000. That doesn't seem right.
Sorry, my apologies. That's everything, Councillor Duncan. Next, I have Taku.
Yeah, just to say that I agree with Mayor Baker's motion to go option B. I think that gives us all an opportunity to revisit and go a lot wider in terms of a new approach and some more clarity. That's all I want to say. But we do have, Ngāti Toa has put up the options that they would like, you know, to give to the community, to bring to the community. And, you know, we just refurbished View Road and we just bought Moana Course. We've heavily invested in the community and we still want to give to the community. So, you know, I think to be a bit smart about it in the relationship going forward, you just need to think a bit deeper. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Taku. Councillor Johnson.
Hi, look, I'd just like to say that I'm in favour of the Mayor's option as well. I think, but I also share Kylie's concern about things dragging on. But I think what we've established around the table today is a desire. There's actually, I think, some fairly clear feedback from the community on the sorts of activities, and I include Ngāti Toa in that, on the sorts of activities they would like to see in there. My fundamental issue, I think Councillor Duncan outlined it really clearly, was a commercial business being in a community facility. And but I also sympathise with the need for childcare in Te Tahi Bay, because it's kind of out on a leg and a wee bit isolated. And as a mum myself, childcare can be really damning to what you're trying to do in your daily life with family. So I think the proposal Anita's put forward is good. I support a year for childcare on the basis they find somewhere else. But in support of Kylie, I think we've got some fairly clear key feedback on what the purpose and desires of the community are, on the range of activities they'd like to do. And so I'd just like to see that part of it fleshed out a bit more. And I don't know, is that actually consultation? Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Next I've got Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora hea mana me he kai kanahira katoa. To the amendment, he patai. What is the backstop if option B is as amended is passed, for when we get past this 1 year period and we still have not yet successfully resolved what is the ongoing arrangement? As it currently stands in the documentation, it would revert to a booking system. The Mayor has pointed out that that would not be an ideal solution, but there must be some form of backstop. Can I get clarity from officers on that?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by backstop.
What happens? Option P gets passed by this council today, and the arrangement continues to the end of the year. Consultation is held in parallel. At the end of that process, no decision is made about the future of the hall. What happens?
Ruben?
So can I just say, it will be in your hands. We will present you an option before then, so it will be in your hands whether or not a decision is made.
Cool. Nothing to add, Ruben?
Yeah, just supporting what Wendy was saying, and also option B was to replace it on the booking system. So the default alternative I would suggest would be that the community is able to use it and rent it and hire it on a booking system basis as a potential backstop. But we would follow your guidance, of course.
Okay, he pātai tuarua. What is the virtue of incorporating this consultation, if the proposed amendment is passed, as part of the LTP as opposed to a separate consultation process, if there is any virtue?
I would suggest that to come up with a viable option with, as Councillor Leggett points out, with some solid backing, it will take a full year. So we do public consultation. What we are talking about here is actually developing some options with other people in the community, which is not your classic special consultative procedure, which goes far and wide. So we're talking about a much more targeted process. So, and I think it's too late, but if you would prefer that, we can do that instead.
I have no preference on this. I need to just ask the question. Here's why I'm asking it. E pātai tuatoru. Why was there nothing in the documents on notice about a proposed alternative option taking on board the feedback from Te Runga or Tuarangatira around what could be an alternate approach? The options are here, were amended based on feedback. Did officers have any thought, maybe we should have put an option 5 in there, an option E?
Ruben?
Earlier in some of the reports that our officers had presented, we had mentioned the longer term plan for developing some type of a community hub in Titahi Bay. Freeing this up onto the booking system does actually allow us to explore options for community use and how it might be best used. As Wendy mentioned earlier, there is a greater desire from the community to have these community hubs that are much more of a community development type focus. And so this option B actually would allow us to start exploring some of those options for what might be built in Titahi Bay as a community hub.
Sub to the last. Knowing that answer just been given, and that we just talked about LTP as a possible mechanism, I'm still on the fence whether that's going to be the useful approach. Are officers confident that 12 months would be an adequate enough time period to get reasonable and effective feedback from the affected communities that we would be engaging with, so we can finally resolve this issue for certainty for the community?
I suggest it won't be final because it's not the most perfect building for a flexible community use. But certainly we can come up with some options that will meet that requirement. So, yeah, we have to cut our cloth. We've spent years talking about it, and within the constraints of the building, 12 months should be long enough.
No more questions.
All right, Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a question? Under option B, we're talking about extending the lease till the end of 25, is that correct? No, until when? Just 1 year from, till the end of 24, I mean. Yeah. So that gives 18 months. Yeah, all right. That's a point of clarification. I would make the point that I agree with the Chief Executive and Kylie as well around that this childcare, I'm just pointing out, childcare does have a community purpose, and I remind councillors about one of our basic tenets around children and young people, and we should not forget that when we're making our decision. And it's all very well to, and I'm not disagreeing with it, to think about the other options that are available for this hall, but there is an existing use for the hall which could be modified to bring in some more community use under option C, and there is no guarantee that there will be childcare available in the community if we go for option B. So I just wanted to make that point without making any judgments about good or bad, but remember children and young people.
Councillor Filo.
So, question for clarification: if we go with option B, does that mean for 18 months that no other groups can use the space because it will be as it is now?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So I think that looking at option C, it will cover lots of the issues that we have, and we'll still have Bay Kids Club there. To take Councillor Duncan's point, I think, and to take your point too, Councillor Leggett, we do, being a childcare, it does have obviously community benefits, but it is also a commercial business. So wouldn't a compromise be to keep them there, but for them to pay commercial rent so that it's not on the ratepayers, and to further, Councillor Ford's point, that it's also not on the ratepayers for the storage? That's sort of where I'm thinking. See, everybody gets to still use it when the Bay Kids Club aren't using it. But with the premise that the rent is changed, that it's not a peppercorn rent, that it does reflect that it's a commercial business, and so that the ratepayers aren't taking the weight of it. That's sort of where I'm sitting, everyone. Yeah,
Can I just clarify whether that's within the scope of C as it currently is, or would that require an amendment?
I think my only difference was the commercial rent,
Yeah.
that was...
So I just want to make sure, because if that's what you want to vote for, I just want to make sure that that is within scope of how it is currently worded. Ruben?
Sorry, just in response to that, we could increase the amount that Bay Kids Club are paying in option C. However, because it's a licence and not a lease, that might affect what that cost is if we get a valuation.
Can I, point of clarification again?
Yeah, sure.
So, I appreciate what you're saying, Catherine, about commercial rates. This is a before and after school care. I doubt whether there's any before or after school care in this area that would survive on paying a commercial rate. So we need to be very careful about what we're deciding around that.
Okay, next was that everything from you, Kathleen? Cool. So I had Councillor Duncan and then Mayor Baker.
Yeah, I take your Councillor Leggett's point, but while we're subsidising what childcare is happening with the Bay kids, there are people, ratepayers over the whole city, who are paying extraordinary amounts of money for childcare for their people, and at the same time subsidising the Bay kids. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. And as for consultation, I think the lack of people coming forward to take part in the consultation we've already had is tacit approval for what councillors are doing in the first place. And I don't think we need to drag each of them out of their houses kicking and screaming to say what they want to do with Treaty Hall. They think they've elected us to do that job for them.
All right, I've got Councillor Ford. Sorry, Izzy, we can't quite make out exactly what you're saying.
Sorry. Let me try to get somewhere. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay, cool. I was just going to actually say exactly what Councillor Duncan had said, and I also agree with Councillor Philo. We haven't even got the numbers around how much other after hours or school childcare charging any kind of community. But we've been elected to make this decision. I don't want to see us drag it out even further. So I don't know. I kind of feel like we're beating this into this. I'd love to see a decision made on it. I don't know if option B quite covers what we want to see there, but yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks, Izzy. Mayor Baker.
Sorry, with my option B, I wasn't trying to drag it out any longer. I'm trying to give this group a bit of clarity till the end of next year. I think we missed the boat with Ngāti Toa, and they have youth as one of their top priorities as well. They may end up with childcare if we had consultation. We don't know. And it could be that they do a better job than we do, as we have done with other things that they have taken from us. So I think we missed the boat on the consultation there. So that's where I'm pushing this back again. And so that's where I was coming from. Pardon? We sold Puna Kōrero. So we did a process. I'm not suggesting we sell. I'm saying we need to work through the consultation so that we have...
Sorry, it's just more on that wording you said they've taken from us. Sorry, that's all I'm catching on my...
Oh, sorry. Sorry for the wording. That's where my option B was coming from, because I just think we've done a consultation one way and we've missed one way. So I'm not trying to make it go for another, put it out that long, but I do think we need the continuity for the kids after school care as well.
All right, so I've got Councillor Johnson and then Councillor Wehapi, and then I think I'm going to put the amendment to a vote just to get things moving along. So Councillor Johnson.
With respect to option B, we've got till the end of 2024, and I wonder if concurrently we can also run a an experiment or utilise the weekends of the hall and just see with interested parties. And what I feel is that's kind of getting stuff moving, and then there's it's 2 full days where some activities, I think we've had good feedback on what's relevant or what the community's looking for. I tend to agree around the place to engage youth and everything. I disagree about a childcare business not being able to survive without a hall lease. I think there's plenty of other examples around. But I do agree, I think there needs to be more talk about that, but I'd really like to see if we can get some progress with this option B and some amendments. What we could do is see some activities on the weekend reasonably quickly, or at least some gathering of community groups so that they can start creating some action and getting some ideas.
Cool, thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Wehapi.
Thank you. I just want to, under option C, that would still allow us to work with Ngāti Toa for the future use of bookings for that hall, wouldn't it?
There's nothing that prevents us from talking with Ngāti Toa, and option C we have that arrangement running until June 2029. If it could be shorter, if you don't agree that that's a good timeframe.
Yeah, so that would, I agree with the Mayor that we need to work with Ngāti Toa in regards to this, but I don't agree that we go along the option B road. So does that make everything a bit more confusing than it already was? I just think we need to make a decision and then include the conversations with Ngāti Toa going forward. That's where I'm at.
Could I maybe ask someone, I don't know, Wendy or Ruben, just to speak to that and the suggestion that we've had from Councillor Wehapi, if we think that would be workable or possible?
Well, I am, for one, I'm quite confused about this debate. But I think there are kind of two factors, aren't there? How long do you want to give Bay Kids Club an opportunity to resettle themselves? What else can we do in the meantime? That's a cost factor. You know, the longer term options. So I think the issue at hand is how long you want to give them, Bay Kids, the opportunity to stay there. So the Mayor's proposal gives it 18 months. Option C gives them until 2029, is it? So, and that is a you know, you could also amend that if you wanted to give it somewhere in between. But it may be simpler just to stick with the two options in terms of voting right now.
All right, so process.
Point of order. I'm just trying to get guidance because I'm going to suggest something so as to resolve this promptly, whether or not we have a vote on the amendment or not. If we can do this without having to go to the vote, that's fine. If, however, the vote for amendment is not successful and the substantive does not change, I'm going to suggest that this gets lied at the table. I feel like we didn't, as councillors, get a chance to do a closed-door workshop to actually give a sense test of some of the questions that would have been asked in that session that would have given clarity to officers in terms of what could have come forward to the item on the table. So I'm just going to check and look around. Do we like the table now, or does it have to go through the amendment?
This is a procedural matter, so we really just have to take it one step at a time and go through the amendment process. And then you can move a procedural motion. I'm looking at Jack at this point.
I'm thinking I'll take that, Councillor Hayward, that you are foreshadowing that if this amendment does not pass, that you will bring a motion to let this lie on the table. Okay, all right.
Yes.
So, 1 second.
I think.
Okay, just a reminder, everyone, under standing orders, that sort of procedural motion can only be moved by someone who hasn't spoken, noting that councillors...
Point of order, I've asked only questions of clarification, not spoken to to either motion.
Counts as spoken.
Speaking to the point of order, in the briefings that were given to incoming officers incoming councillors at the start of this year, great care was taken by the presenters to point out that questions of clarification are not speaking and do not count towards things like time speaking under the standing orders. Why would it now be different?
I'll defer to Jack on that. He's my standing orders expert.
Okay, so I'm hearing that that's my ruling. I'm happy to accept that reasoning, Councillor Hayward. So I've noted your foreshadowing, and I'm comfortable with you bringing that amendment if that does eventuate. So in order to see whether or not we're getting there, first of all, we do need to do this initial vote. So I'm just going to walk through everything so everyone knows exactly what we're doing. So we are now voting on whether to change the recommendation to the Mayor's amendment, which I will read again, and that's that we would agree to adopt option B with community consultation on the continued use for the hall, with a secretarial note noting Wendy's explanation from before and the things that we've discussed here. So I'm about to put that. If that is successful, that will then become the substantive, and then we would go on to, well, probably here, depending on what happens from there, we'll continue on. But that would make that the substantive motion. Councillor Nalo?
Hey, just to throw another plot twist in, I'll be looking at the options. I too would like to make an amendment as well with option B, with access to the other community groups as well.
Okay, so
option
B.
B.
An amendment to the amendment?
It's not here at the moment.
Okay, well, I think we can do that with the leave of the mover and seconder. That's okay. Okay,
Can I just point of clarification? Julia has pointed out to me that it's a lease, so we can't extend a lease and have other people coming in. They would have to have other people coming in. So it's not quite possible under this mechanism.
Okay, so we couldn't achieve that under B. Okay. All right, but well, that's good to know, I guess, as a clarification for our voting. So there's clearly going to be some different perspectives on this. So I'm going to ask for hands as we vote on this, if you can raise your hand. So I'm going to put this amendment. So if you are in favour, all in favour of this amendment, please raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, opposed? 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So really it comes down to me. Excellent. I'm gonna... Sorry, what was that, Councillor Ford? Oh. Okay.
Can we just do the voting again?
Yeah, okay. So, sorry, we just need to check that voting again. So I will ask again, all in favour of that amendment, please raise your hand. Okay, and I will note that's Councillor Johnson, Councillor Hayward, Councillor Duncan, Mayor Baker, Taku. Was that everyone? Yeah, because Ross changed. Oh, Ross has changed it. Okay. I haven't changed it yet. Okay, so all opposed? Councillor Waddle, Councillor Ford, Councillor Leggett, Councillor Nalo, Councillor Weehapi, and Councillor Philo. Okay, cool. So it's still 5-6, so it still comes down to me. Oh dear, okay. 12 including Taku. Yep. Okay. Oh dear. I think, yeah, I'm going to stick with the original option C. So that amendment hasn't passed. We've got those votes recorded. So, Councillor Hayward, you foreshadowed that you wanted to bring a procedural motion. Cool. Could you just clarify that again for us?
Yes, I'd like the item to lay on the table and come back to this council within the next 4 weeks. Or well, it may very well be workshop if it wants to be, but at least the item has to come back to our meeting within the next 4 weeks.
Okay.
Can you please clarify what will change in those 4 weeks, or do you just want to have another debate?
To clarify options regarding the submission, in particular from the Runanga, around alternate consultation approach, and if that is put up as an option, then we compare that with the other options that were on the table at this meeting.
All right, so that's been moved by Councillor Hayward. I believe that needs to be seconded by someone that hasn't spoken yet. I believe. Is that correct? Yep. Okay, cool. So that would have to be seconded by either Councillor, or it will just have to be Councillor Waddle, I believe, at this point. No. Okay, so that hasn't been seconded, so that's not successful. All right. We now have a new substantive motion. Well, no, we have the original substantive. Here we go. But we've thrashed it out, and I think we've had some good discussion. Thank you, everyone. So, just to make sure again that everyone now understands what we're doing and going back to that original motion, which I will just read through. So that's that we receive the report, that we're, this isn't scrolling down. No, this isn't. Sorry, do you have a, cool. Thank you, now we're getting technical difficulties. Okay, so receiving the report, we've received the 2 additional oral submissions, agree to adopt option C, and agree to classify lot 34 DP 19907 for the current purpose as the under number 4. All right. Everyone's happy?
Sorry, did you say option C and then leaving it to 2029?
So I believe option C as it's presented in the report. Okay.
Question of clarification.
Councillor Fila.
So if the amateur radio has it till 2029, what does this mean for Bakers Club?
They both would run until 2029.
Both arrangements run until June 2029, as it says in the document.
Thank you, Councillor Waddle.
Okay, all right. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. All right. Could I get, again, a raise of hands on this, just to clarify? So I'm going to, again, all in favour, please raise your hand. Of option C? Yeah. So sorry, just. Cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Ford, are you voting on this? Not in favour? Okay, cool. Thank you. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. And I'm okay. This isn't carried yet. Do we need to adjourn again? I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with this before we vote on it. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. All right, starting back up. Councillor Weehappy, could I clarify, or whether it's you or someone else that wanted to speak to this, if we wanted to look at changing the date from 29 to what we want to change it to? What is it you want to change it to, sorry?
Sure, to 2024. Now, I understand that the original motion was option B, but with option B, there is no other community use for that time. So under option C, I would have proposed that it would go to 2024 as well, but other community people can still use the hall within that time. That's the difference.
Okay, I see. Do officers have a clear understanding of what's being asked for here? Okay, so procedurally, what I'm going to propose here is that I will put that with the leave of the committee, which we can do as long as no one objects to that. So I'm going to put that with the leave of the committee. Are there any objections? No, there are no objections. That's been noted. All right, so what date in 2024 specifically?
That would have been at the end of December 2020.
Okay, cool. Right at the end of the year. I've asked for any objections. I haven't heard any. So I've put that with the leave of the meeting. All right, I'm now going to put the substantive motion as we've just addressed here. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, we actually have another agenda item. So, all right. We will now move to item 7.2, Porirua City Council Transport Bylaw. Do we have, is it Gaushik? Would you like to speak to this? If you want to come up, just if there are any questions.
Do you want to move it?
Oh yeah, sorry, apologies. First of all, I need to move this, get it on the table. I have a seconder, Councillor Waddle. Thank you very much. All right, would you like to speak to this or go straight to questions? Straight to questions.
Straight
okay,
to questions.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions on this item? No? All right. So in that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Excellent. Well done, everyone. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll now move a motion for us to go into public excluded. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hayward, thank you very much. All in favour? Aye. No? Opposed? That is carried. All right, we'll move into public.